It's just you and me, girl.
We're live.
Just you and me. And I am just so grateful to just be one-on-one. Like we just did a live a couple weeks ago and we had four other amazing humans that were around us. And you and I had kind of made this decision a while ago as we've talked about building the soul school and what your part would play in it. We were like, well, let's get on a live together and do this one-to-one and put it out there to these women. And we decided that today, which is 11/11, we were meant to do this at 11/11 at 11/11, but we didn't do that. But we both know that on 11/11, there's this really beautiful opportunity for us to let go of what no longer serves us and call in the energy and the dreams and the opportunities that are waiting for us. They're already ours, right? And today's conversation is really about planting the seeds for the future with no expectations of timeline.
Yeah. Today is one of the biggest manifestation days in the planetary. I don't know exactly how it all works, but 11/11 is really important. And if you see repeated number ones, it's also part of, your journey and signs and signals. And I happen to have lived in two number 11 houses in my life in two different countries. And I also have lived in 355 in two different countries, 355 houses. It's wild. But these number repetitions also just give me this like, okay, you're on the right track. You're on the right track. And when I see them on my phone or on any clocks. So today is a really big day to also think about where you want to go. So I would say from a planning perspective, it's important that we put down what our goals are and where we see ourselves and what we want to have happen. And then, of course, probably the hardest part is releasing and trusting the process when roadblocks happen or things get in your way. It's like, am I really supposed to be doing that? Like having that certainty and trust. That's the work.
I love that. So our purpose of today, of you and I getting on this call together and sharing with whomever is meant to be here and to see this message today, is really about finding freedom. I think you and I have talked to hundreds of women who are in search of freedom. And I think what we both know, I know now, I was one of those people who burned it all down a couple of times to try and find that freedom. And what's so beautiful about you and your story is that you have gotten to this place now where you serve and support other people and not having to burn it all down, right? To have some strategy in thinking ahead and what do you want your future to look like? And doing that in a way that actually offers some sanity, but also is very strategic. Whether they're exiting corporate, whether they're looking to get into another career, or they're looking to get into another role, you, Keri-Lynne Shaw, are this beautiful founder of, correct me if I'm wrong, the salary bump, the career bump, the exit bump. I mean, like you help people strategically in all aspects of their professional, and you also sprinkle in the personal aspect that kind of goes along with that too. Am I correct in all that I just shared there?
Yeah. Well, first of all, we don't shut off our life when we go to work, right? So what serves us professionally also needs to serve us personally. And I think a lot of people don't necessarily know that when you go to school and you study something, you study maybe what your parents said, this would be a good idea. I mean, I have people who call me like, Kale, I've been an accountant for 25 years. I hate accounting. My mom was an accountant. My dad was an accountant and I'm an accountant and please help me blow up my whole life. And so people come to these realizations at different stages in their life. But I am such a believer that if you get to focus on what you love, what you're really good at, and how you want to impact the world. And hopefully it's something that the world also needs. And you get to play in that space. 90% of your day, you will be far more fulfilled. You will be far happier. You will live the life that you always wanted to live. So, yeah, the salary bump was what I started with. That was my first baby. And then it turned into the career bump because people weren't quite ready for the salary negotiation part yet. So then, my clients are the ones who actually created these other children. So I met them where they are and where they were. And so, yeah, so the career bump came, and then I was helping people negotiate exit packages as part of any kind of career transition. And people don't realize that they can proactively ask, which then gave them leverage and leeway to go figure out what they wanted to do next. Not be maybe in toxic environments, or instead of retiring, raising your hand for a package. And when I helped a woman negotiate $2.3 million, that was when I was like, oh, there's another bump here. And that then has turned into 42% of my business has become exit package negotiations. My clients float in between all of my different bumps, if you will, depending on where they are. And yeah, it's been a really interesting journey. And I would say not without my own bumps, because, being an entrepreneur and building something from scratch, not knowing if it's a viable business, not knowing if it's something that the world wants or needs, I did know there was a gender and racial pay gap. That I knew, and that I knew was something that the world needs my help. And by the way, everyone listening to this call, we all play a role in this, men and women, and stepping into your own power. And if you're a leader, doing your equity analysis on your team, like if everyone just did that and closed those gaps, we wouldn't have such an extreme pay gap. But that's for another conversation. I knew the world needed it. So then it was just a question of how do I build it and bring it to life? And that wasn't a linear line for sure.
There's such a beautiful connection. So I was sharing with you, I think you were actually in Chicago, and I was sharing, I may have shared it with you before, but I remember sharing the Soul School with you and just kind of the premise behind really taking my own experiences and my own challenges of exiting my 25-year career, not knowing that entrepreneurship was going to be one of my bingo card, right? And I really went through a lot of challenges, just kind of facing my hyper independence, right? Not being able to ask for help, thinking I could do it all on my own, blah, blah, blah. And really getting to the stage of my own business and looking back on my experiences as a former educator, going through this experience of building my business and saying, like, I want to help other women who are just like you and I were, right? We were exhausted and burned out and overwhelmed in our careers. And we're feeling that tension that, like, maybe this isn't meant for me. Can I do this for another 10, 15, 20 years? And for many of the women I've spoken to, they're like, no, I want out. And I'm not saying building a business is for everybody, but I think I want, the Soul School is really about creating a space where women can still stay in their corporate gigs, their 9-to-5 gigs. Maybe it's not even corporate. It could be education, could be something else, where they're still getting that paycheck, but they're building this foundation of creating that business that they might have a dream of, right? So they're getting paid. I didn't do this. You didn't do this either, right? We left our careers, and yes, we had a financial runway, but we weren't getting necessarily a paycheck from our jobs while we were building a business. And I remember saying this to you, and you're like, oh, this is a brilliant idea. And you immediately popped in and you were like, and I could help women with the exit strategy and negotiating their exit packages. And I was like, it didn't even click in my mind, but me just sharing that with you and you popping in saying, well, here's how I can serve and support the women within the Soul School. And I have come to believe, as I sat with this, that you are the key differentiator in really the success of the Soul School and the women who enter into that, because not only are they building their future, right? They're also creating this strategic exit plan of where they currently are to serve and support that future as they maybe head into entrepreneurship. So I'm so grateful you're in my life.
Well, there was a reason why we met, and you were actually one of the key differentiators in my growth journey. And I think what I loved so much, I think it was Nashville, actually, at that taco place that we were sitting at, that you were like planting these seeds. Maybe you hadn't named it yet, but you were trying to figure that out. And I think that's also part of the beauty of exploring. And, you are one of the most amazing coaches that I have ever interacted with. You are game changing in my life, and I know hundreds of other people's lives, thousands. That said, we explore to figure out what the magic is. Some of us immediately like, no, this is boom, this is it. I was really clear on what I was really good at and what I loved. And so my clarity came a little bit sooner, but you don't have to have it all figured out on day one. It's part of the exploration. And I love that. And whether you explore while you're still employed with a W-2, or you explore after you leave, hopefully with a financial runway that we've negotiated. And so thank you for saying that. I believe that this work is a massive differentiator, because most people don't realize. When I talk on any podcast, any speaking engagement, when I mention that you can proactively ask for a package, people are literally mic drop. And I think in this environment, it's even more powerful because as a former CHRO, when we look at the P&L, any CEO flips it upside down in descending order and looks for the highest costs inside any organization. Well, guess what? Is it the highest part? The number one line item is personnel, and that's headcount. So they're always looking at how do we hit our EBITDA numbers? How do we navigate our profit and our revenue targets? And unfortunately, that's the one that gets cut. So you have this advantage that you can go in and talk about presenting it in a way that gives them a good guy, right? Presenting it in a way that says, you know what, I don't know if you actually need my role anymore. Hear me out. Or I think it's time. Maybe you and your CEO, or you and your boss, you and your VP aren't seeing eye to eye, and you know that you're probably on the list to get exited anyway. Proactively getting in front of it means that you've got more negotiating power. And, the woman that I mentioned that negotiated $2.3 million, it was a situation where she was like, I think I'm going to retire, but I'm not really retiring. Like, I'm actually going to go do something else, like fractional or board stuff. And I said, well, if you're not retiring, then let's have this conversation. And she was shook that she was able to do it. It was like a 10-minute conversation. Of course, we did a lot of the prep work in advance, and then there was some negotiation afterwards. But when you don't know what you don't know, that's what makes this so helpful, that we get to share this with the world. And I may layer on top of that, coming back to you for a moment, when you mentioned anyone who has launched a company knows that it is not for the faint of heart. My journey, your journey in building these businesses did not just magically happen. It took an incredible amount of grit and uncertainty and fear. Had the Soul School existed, I have goosebumps just talking about it.
Me too, girl.
Had the Soul School existed when we launched,
Yes,
and being surrounded by somebody who can help you with accounting and bookkeeping, somebody that can help you with your sales process, somebody that can help you with your exit package, somebody that can help you with what marketing looks like, somebody that can help you with your branding, somebody that can help you with your website. The entire thing would have saved me heartache, would have saved me probably some tears, would have saved me from having to go find my people.
yes.
Now, that said, it wouldn't change my journey for anything. It was a really important part of just me becoming, but having those resources and having then that network of sharing that with other people who are also building a business at the same time, because the Soul School is, you're going to find your people inside that group as well. It would have sped up the process. And I would say just one more thing. When I decided to go all in and say, okay, this business is something, but it's not moving fast enough for me. I want to replace my C-suite salary. So let's hurry this up. Like, is this a viable business? Like, let's get to the point. I hired myself 4 coaches. I invested heavily. Okay, one was a hormone coach, navigating menopause, no joke, but I tell you, that was a big part of,
Yes. Yes.
the rabbit hole and the 3 a.m. and not sleeping and my cortisol and my hormones being all over the place. That was a very big part. I hired a trauma coach to release a trauma from 20 years ago. That was something that my body was carrying. I hired a business coach, and I hired you.
Mm.
And, if I look at you and the business coach, you were the others were very clear in getting my baseline right, my foundation right, but I could not have done it without the 2 of you. So essentially that's the soul school,
Yes.
times 7, because there's 7 other, places to go in the school. But investing in you and having that community is huge. Game
Ah,
changer.
I appreciate that so much. And I think, what I hear from that, because I think the work you and I did was really on mindset, right? And
Mm.
was really kind of reframing past experiences, old stories, what's in your movie right now, why is it there? Really reframing them. And that is such a big part of entering into exiting a system that has really told you how to think, how to be, what schedule you're going to abide by, what work you're going to do, right? There's just, when you step into being a solopreneur, it all falls on you. And I will die on this hill that building your business is probably 51% confidence, belief, mindset, and 49% business strategy, because the business piece of it can waver, right? It can be a little bit of a roller coaster ride, but if your mindset and confidence and belief in yourself is smooth and stable, like, you're
Yeah.
going to get through those waves. So I want to dig in, because I want to ask you a couple of questions that relates to it, but I think it relates to this as we're talking about mindset is we were talking about, so I talk to a lot of women on a lot of different platforms who get into my DMs, they email me, we get on calls, and they are just stuck, and they're almost paralyzed
Mm.
with fear. And so I'm wondering what your perspective is on, like, why do you think so many women, and I don't just think it's women, by the way, but we're
Mhm.
for the sake of the soul school, which is going to be serving women, why do you think there are so many women out there that stay stuck in places where they feel undervalued or they feel unhappy?
I'm going to answer that in one moment. I just noticed our names are not underneath our pictures, in case you wanted to add those, for people to be able to connect with us. I think, Renee, like anything, I think it's fear that
Mm,
gets in our way. And I think limiting beliefs generally. And I think staying stuck. So, first of all, it takes a great amount of courage
mhm.
to do anything that is outside of societal norms, of perhaps what is expected of you. I might disappoint someone. What if I fail? And I think the what if I fail, if I look back at my career in from where I started to the C-suite, my definition of success was title and money.
Yes.
And I did very well. And I think, I made it as far as on the corporate side, as I had never really imagined that I would get there, but it was like, okay, I kept moving, kept moving, kept moving. Um, I There were times where I doubted whether or not I was a good enough leader, whether or not I would say the right things, whether or not, um, my voice was heard. So there was definitely things throughout my career where I would doubt myself, but it wasn't as extreme as doubting myself
Mm,
now taking this leap.
mm.
What if I am not good enough to
Yes.
do this? I never thought I would be an entrepreneur. I never thought for one second that I would own a company. I became a coach 12 years ago to help as an HR leader. I didn't think that I would ever become a coach. Um, so I think the fear of not whatever your fear is it not, I'm not good enough, I'm not smart enough, I'm not pretty enough, I'm not worthy. There's a million things that I suppose throughout our lives we all experience or feel. And I would say that that was under like the biggest microscope as now a business owner, and like convincing like, even the people in my life, like, no, this is something that actually I think is going to be something. But it was like my belief. And then, but if I'm the only one that believes it, like I have to, well, the money will come one day, like when are you getting a paycheck? Because I didn't pay myself the first year. And that was really hard and really scary. Or if, you have a meeting with a client, a potential client, and it's like, is the client going to say yes? And like releasing, it's just such an interesting process. Anyway, coming back to your question, I think fear is one of the biggest things that is knocked down and very hard to find the courage to climb back up. When you get knocked down, you get back up again. Like it felt like every day was ground, like, or, just like all the silly things like technology and your website, and is it crashing, and is the checkout process working, and how do you make it seamless, and things you're not necessarily good at. You're a great coach, but are you a techie? Like, are you? Probably not. So like having to be you had to have everything in your toolkit in order to build this, unless you have a support system. So I think it's scary. And not having your regular paycheck, I would say, is another big fear factor. What if it doesn't work out? How do I pay my bills?
Yeah. And well, let's just tap into that. What if it doesn't work out? Right? That question alone is the reason why so many people don't step into what their hearts are probably telling them that they're ready to do. Is what if it doesn't work out? And, reframe, what if it does? What if this becomes everything that you're searching for? And I think oftentimes the women that I speak to, that's the first thing they'll say is, I want the same amount of money that I'm currently making right now. Like I can't do life without making the same amount of money that I'm doing now. And so I think that that's often the reason why people stay, the golden handcuffs, right? But when we get really, like, when we dig into like, what is it that you're really searching for? Right? Because money is front and center, like that title, all of that has been wrapped up in a little, in your little bubble for so long, you can't really think beyond that. And I think that's when like you work with a coach or somebody who's just, even for 30 minutes on a coffee chat, it's like, what are you really searching for? And often what I hear is freedom. I want to feel free. I want to have the flexibility, and I want to feel fulfilled, right? I keep saying those three words over and over again because that's every woman I have talked to, there's some version of that. That's what they're really searching for. Yeah. And you can have it all. You can have all of that, and you can have financial security. But and this too, there's sacrifices that you need to make in the interim, right? To get to those places of freedom, flexibility, fulfillment, and financial security. It's not going to be a seamless leap. However, just to plug the soul school again, however, hearing that money is usually the driving force between people staying stuck in their careers and not exiting. It's why I was like, well, this makes perfect sense, is to create a space for people to enter into while they're still getting that corporate paycheck. Bring somebody like you in who's going to help them with their exit strategy and plan ahead and plant those seeds. And now they've got their first year of their business under their belt, and they can make a decision on whether or not they want to leave after that first year, or they want to keep building their business with the protection of their financial security, right? So, but here's the thing, you're going to have to sacrifice some time and energy to do both of those. You're going to have to sacrifice, maybe some evenings or maybe some weekends to learn about building your business while you're still in that, high stress 9-to-5 job.
It's how bad do you want it?
Yeah, totally. Right?
How bad do you want it? I would just add on to that, whether you are starting a business, a side hustle, a full-time job, so a new business, whatever, if you don't have a 12-month runway in today's environment, with the way that layoffs are happening, you aren't serving yourself well. It would be my number one action to take right now. Whether I help you with a negotiation and an exit, that's not guaranteed. So I can't guarantee how much we're going to get. I can't guarantee that it's going to, like, right? I mean, we have great success, but you have to have a 12-month financial backup plan in looking at your expenses. So that would be step one before anybody takes any action. That would be my biggest recommendation, because I actually also believe that you don't necessarily need what you think you need. When you look at where you're spending and things that you're spending,
Yes.
where like just where I spend today versus being a
Yes.
corporate girly, I mean, I'm not buying the handbags and the shoes and the clothing that I used to buy. I'm not investing. I work from home, so I'm not spending on a car and gas and the things that I used to spend on. And my version of success has changed. My definition. So you talked about the 3 F's, the 4th F being financial. That is still important to me, by the way. And I think there was a part of me that felt guilty about that. I had to do some work on my relationship to money. Like, I can still want to be financially successful, and that is okay. I don't have to be embarrassed about that or ashamed of that. But that's not my number one definition of fulfillment, freedom, and flexibility. Those are my 3 number one categories that I spent 6 weeks in Europe this summer. I can work from anywhere. Having that flexibility and freedom is such a gift that I totally underestimated being in corporate. Think about how I raised my daughter, and I spent my entire corporate career when I was raising her, like the sacrifices that I made in corporate that I would have today in getting her off to school and picking her up. I was never home for either one of those things. And, looking back, and I don't regret any of it. It was the experience that I was in, and the time we didn't have the same tools that we have. And when I started, we didn't even have laptops when she was born. So like if she had a sick day, I was devastated. So the world has changed, and we have access to so many more things today. I would just say, don't be shy to ask for help, and don't be shy, and go find your people in your community and find the people that can help you. Ask these questions, even if you're just exploring. I don't know if I want to do this, but I'd love to meet other women that are doing it and get inspired. That in itself could inspire you as a leader. It could inspire you to say, I joined the Soul School and I don't want to do that. Business ownership is not for me. Well, you're still going to learn something from that.
Yes.
And that then solidifies, okay, so now if I stay in corporate, what do I really want? And is it this industry? Is it more an industry that's more aligned, or a company that's more aligned to my values? So you will still get something out of it.
100%. I love, yes, because here, you've heard me say this, life is an experiment. We are living in a science lab, and how you go and experience and experiment with life is on you. If you choose to stay in the safe zone, right, where you can predict every outcome, you're probably not going to meet your greatest potential, what you're here to do, right? So kind of getting out of that box and being able to have some people that help you take those risks and face that uncertainty is really powerful. So I want to come back to kind of a little bit more of what you do. I want to hear, what do you feel like are some of the mistakes that people make when they leave their jobs? What do they forget to do?
Well, first of all, I think they let emotion take over. I can't tell you how many people reach out and just say, like, my boss is the biggest jerk on the planet, and I have to get out of here. Or I'm on a PIP and my boss is not giving me any clear direction, or like my company, I don't align with their values. It's a massive values conflict. I've been in those situations. So I think the emotion of, I want to give my company the big FU, like this is sometimes that driver then gets in the way of you having that strategic roadmap and strategic conversation. There is a strategic way to do this, and this is what I guide people to do. So if okay, let's temper it down. Let's take it down a couple of notches. If we were to remove the emotion of it and we look at this rationally, what are our options? what is appropriate to ask for, what is an appropriate runway for someone of your level and your tenure, and let's map this out. And then we map out a beautiful conversation that they get to have with dignity, with grace, and with a high level of professionalism. Because if you come in guns a-blazing, I can promise you, as a former CHRO sitting in that seat, someone comes in and is a total jerk, they're not getting as much from me. If someone comes in and has a really thoughtful conversation with me, it's a very different outcome. So it's the honey and vinegar. You will get far more if you plan this conversation and you plant the right seeds. And you also observe what's happening in the organization. So if the organization has just announced their quarterly earnings and they're really poor, it's a good time to ask. If you and your boss, it's clear you're not seeing eye to eye, and it's clear that this is not a path that makes sense, proactively having the conversation to say, listen, I sense something's off here with us. I sense that I'm not meeting your expectations. Again, this isn't the first conversation you have. I'm just giving you a generality, but let's talk about where we go from here. Like, you also take the anxiety out of the room when you have this like lovely, that's not a lovely conversation, it's a hard conversation, but when you present it in a way that is a win-win, you've just taken a lot of stress off your boss, who's probably going to end up firing you anyway, or is trying to get rid of you somehow. Like, it's like, oh, great, I don't have to fire her. That's so good. You would be surprised at how beautiful these conversations. I would tell you a really funny story. So the woman that I mentioned that negotiated $2.3 million, her husband was adorable throughout this entire process. And after everything was said and done and she left the organization, he's like, okay, so I've printed off the 7 steps of grieving, and I think we should sit down and go through them. And she's like, honey, I'm not grieving. Because she was in the driver's seat of that conversation, which, by the way, she was going to end up getting terminated anyway. It all came out in the wash and an email, doesn't matter. She got to do this from a place of absolute
power.
Like, she grabbed the wheel, sat in that car, put her foot on the gas, and went. So because she came at it from a place of being in the driver's seat, and the coaching and the scripting and everything that we did to prepare gave her such confidence. I could read you some of the text messages. And it's like, Kale, I've never in my life felt so free. I've never in my life felt so confident. And when her husband was like, let's go through the steps of grieving so we can process this. She's like,
hell no, I don't need to
do
a
glass of champagne, please. So, and this is one story. It happens to be the most successful one that we negotiated, but there's been others in the millions. And others that just, here's a 12-week runway, get me the heck out of here, and they're happy as a clam. So it depends on your level and your tenure. She happened to be highly tenured and at a higher level. But when you get rejected and you get terminated, it is a process for people to go through. It's a blow. It's a blow to your ego. There was some ego work that she had to go through anyway, because releasing that title and, her long career with this company. So there is some ego work that you have to, like, who am I now that I'm no longer with that company? I went through that leaving BMW. It was such a recognized brand, one of the top 3 always in the world. I had such great pride being the head of HR there. And I remember the ego adjustment to no longer being tied to that organization. It took me a minute. And then, of course, leaving corporate in general and saying I'm a chief people officer or a chief HR officer. I had great pride in that too. So there was some things for me to work on myself. Like, okay, so if I'm not tied to that, what am I? Who am I? And to know that I'm enough, even without any title. And then I'm right where I'm supposed to be.
I think that's a beautiful tie into my next question for you, because you're talking a lot about identity, right? And I think this next question of like, how do women start negotiating from a place of power and not fear? I think a big part of that is helping them also recognize who they are beyond the title that they carry or the company that they work within. So how do you, and I think it is different for women versus men, right? I think, not to say that men don't also negotiate from fear, but I think women, as a society, a part of our stories and how we've been trained is that we don't ask for what we deserve. And
Mm-hmm.
so how do you help women when they're in this space, like you're talking about this woman, who got 2.3 million? It's how do we negotiate? How do we help women negotiate from a place of power as opposed to, oh, I don't deserve that, or I don't want to have that conversation, I want to put them out? How do you help them negotiate from that place?
Yeah, I mean, that's a really loaded question because it's not a couple of minute answer. There's a lot to unpack. There's a lot to unpack around your relationship to money, around your limiting beliefs around money. What I always find to be extremely helpful is using facts and using market data as a grounder for them, right? So just because you're at a certain company making a certain amount of money doesn't mean that that's actually what the market is paying. So I always bring in factual data to say, this is what the market is paying for this role that you're interviewing for. This is what the market is paying for the role you are in. You are grossly underpaid. Let's talk about that. Let's talk about how we close that gap. Whether we're getting you a promotion because you're in an interim role and you want to land that role, whether you're leading up to your Q4 discussion and putting together your self-assessment with your boss. It's more about how are you leading these conversations in the driver's seat. So we need to unpack some of the muck over here, unpack the limiting beliefs, what's getting in your way, your fears. But we're also looking and spending some time on what you really want. What do you value? What do you care about? How do you want to make a difference in the world? What do you want to be known for? What does the world act like? What is it? And asking, I always ask clients these three questions: what do you love? What are you really good at? And how do you want to impact the world? Because if you can, I feel like my 30-year corporate career, and you can probably, I've heard you say some similar things, but like your 25-year career as a principal and in education, like it's almost like this magical, everything I have now in my hands has brought me to this moment that I now get to share this with the world. And I am grateful for every single one of those missteps, those mistakes or failures, successes, wins, challenges. Every one of those things brought me to this moment. And so everyone has that story. And helping you align also gives you greater confidence. So if I know I am working in pharma and that is against my value, use whatever industry you want, helping you align to an industry that is really lights your fire and you can make an impact in, that is super helpful. So unpacking those two things before we figure out how to put you in the driver's seat, that is huge. Of course, I have sat in that chair from an HR perspective. Statistically, 87% of the time that you negotiate, the answer is yes. And people don't know that. So people think, I can't negotiate because they might take the role, they might take the job offer back from me. I can't negotiate because I'm not worthy. If I negotiate, they might think I want the money more than I want the job. I can't negotiate because the market is so difficult. We unpack all of that garbage and we bring stats. We bring statistics, which is less than 30% of women are negotiating. That number is in the 20s for people of color. Those are highly unfortunate stats when 87% of the time the answer is yes. If you knew you were leaving between $1 million and $1.5 million on the table as an individual, anyone listening to this is what you're leaving over your career by not negotiating. That's creating generational wealth. That's creating a retirement for you. That is not greed. That is these are real dollars. Katika Roy is a economist who writes for the New York Times. She's amazing. Those are statistics that she has brought to the table, they're very real. So everyone who you're negotiating with is expecting you to. So we ground to facts. We unpack this crap over here. We help you to be able to walk into that conversation with confidence. We help you frame the conversation as a win-win. I thought negotiation was like the legal shows I watched growing up. There's a winner and a big loser. And I thought, oh, negotiation is so ugly. And oh, I can't negotiate. I have to prove myself first and all these things. So we unpack all of that and prep you for a beautiful conversation. But it's not a flip of a switch.
Yeah, just as you were talking, I was just thinking there's so many, again, I'm focusing on women because that's what who the soul school will serve. And I think it's more dominant in that gender than it is with men. But I just think like how important it is, and I see this with even the clients that I work with, and I get to coach, is, sorry, my overalls were unbuttoned here, is how important it is to have somebody kind of holding your hand as you're entering into these conversations, right? For me, it might be talking about somebody who wants to leave their career, or maybe is having conversations with their partner or their spouse, like speaking their truth, right? That's really like the stepping into the power, is like learning how to speak your truth and speak up for yourself. And sometimes you need somebody who gets it, like, and that's why the soul school I think is so special, is because we've got all these different coaches, right, that help you in different aspects of your life, whether it's the mindset, which is me, whether it's negotiation, right, and exiting your negotiation or your exit package, or it's finding clarity, or if it's finding your content messaging, like how you show up online, or your sales process, right? Like having somebody kind of hold your hand and walk you through all of the fears that you encounter in those situations, right? Fear of judgment, fear of failure, fear of rejection, fear of abandonment, right? All of these fears kind of come up. But if you've got somebody who's got the expertise and the experiences kind of walking you through that and holding your hand, it makes all the difference. And it's like you've got your ride or die cheerleader hype girl, like hanging out with you on your side as you go and have these conversations.
I think one of the big challenges that happens with people who are taking this leap is it's an investment.
Yes.
And one of the blocks is, how can I pour into myself? Mm-hmm. Of course, we know we're pouring into ourselves and our business. How can I pour into myself with I'm not making money yet? I faced that. And I remember the 4 coaches that I invested in, it was no joke in terms of financial investment.
Yep.
And I remember having conversations with my husband about it. And he was like, you go all in. Go all in, because you need to figure this out. And the sooner I can figure out if this was something that I actually really wanted to do, the sooner that I could like either soar or move on to whatever was next. And I am so grateful that he convinced me to go all in. Mm-hmm. I think, my typical self would have been like, take baby steps. But I got to a point where I was exhausted. And I don't, what you're serving people is, they don't necessarily need to get to that exhaustion point. They might, right? Because there's lots of ups and downs, and there's rock bottom, and there's like, everybody goes on their own journey. But I invested at the right time. But if I had invested a little bit earlier, I would have probably saved myself some heartache. But I'm so grateful for everything that I went through. But investing in me, and I would say the only way that my business has been successful is because of the investment in me. Mm-hmm. And that was the work you and I did. And that was learning to speak my truth and not blaming others for what's happening around me, holding the mirror up. My baby was ugly. I did not realize how ugly it was because I thought it was everyone else's fault, but there was some stuff that I had been holding on to for years, years and years and years, probably even back to childhood, that I didn't realize. And that work was some of the most powerful work I've ever done. And that work continues, whether you are my coach still or not.
Yes.
I get to continue that work through Kabbalah, through other spiritual practices, through Reiki, through things I had never heard of before, through continuing to look in the mirror and know what my triggers are, know learned responses versus reactions, knowing when I get triggered, what I can either go this way, the old KL. And I didn't say I reacted in a terrible way, but, like I internalized a lot of it. And then I would doubt myself and I would, go through whatever. I've learned to respond in a different way and recover much quicker than I ever did before. That is the game changer, because I can do a little bit of work. I can dance around it, and then or I can go all in. And I think the going all in was the part that was the most magical of this whole experience.
Yeah, I think that's another barrier. It goes back to money, right? I think that's a huge barrier for all of us, is that we can invest in everybody else. I mean, how many mothers out there invest thousands and thousands of dollars in their kids, right? On the shoes, on the sports, on the after school events, on the clothes, on whatever it is. Like, we can pour all of this money into everybody else, and we forget about ourselves, right? And what you're saying out loud here for so many to hear is that when you decided to, and by the way, kudos to Reiner, your husband, for being that encourager and that support, because I also hear from a lot of women who are like, my partner doesn't understand, my spouse doesn't understand me wanting to go in, and probably is judging me a little bit, right? So for
well,
Reiner,
let's be clear. He was also hoping that the money would come. And he just happens to have opened the door. Renee, just give you a huge kudos, Reiner. He was also interested in me speeding up this process to say, okay, like, is this viable business, or are you going back to corporate, honey? Like, let's figure this out. So there was probably a little bit of motive behind it, but yes, to his support, to his credit, like, my business coach cost me thousands and thousands, and I still have him by my side a year and a half later, and I will probably always have him by my side, because every week it's something new and it's fresh, and I'm continue to grow my business every year, and having him as a spitball partner, having him to give me ideas, best investment. And when I was looking at my expenses this year, Reiner was helping me, structure it. And I was like, okay, so let's talk about Steve Noodleberg, shout out, favorite. He was like, you are not looking at your expenses. You are not releasing Steve. He has been such an important, critical part of your business. So, yes, there's different motives. And, I would say he was a super support, but I also felt like I had to prove it to him. And I doubted myself a lot. And if I was talking to him, he would say things and I would get very triggered by them. Not necessarily was he saying anything wrong, but I hadn't done yet the work on myself. So it's all a process. It's a beautiful, messy process.
I think you bring up something really important. And, I want to bring this back to the soul school is we know, so you've talked about money and investing in yourself and what that has cost you, right? Without putting a number to it. But here's the thing, when we go into building a business, we can spend thousands upon thousands of dollars, sometimes in the wrong people, right? I've hired a couple coaches that weren't a good fit for me, and I've spent thousands of dollars on the wrong fit. And, when you look at the business as a whole, it's like you become a marketing, you have to know about marketing, you have to know about sales, you have to know about social selling, you have to know about systems, right? And then you get your CRM set up. You've got all of these different aspects of your business. And honestly, it's like you could go out and spend thousands. When I say, like, I think I did a poll a few weeks ago on LinkedIn and asked, like, in the last 3 years, how much money have you spent on your business or investing in yourself for your business? And I think 40% of the respondents said 20 to 30,000. Right. I don't know where they were. So they might have been in the third year of her business.
Yeah.
Um, but it's true. It's like when you go, it's like you think you can do this stuff on your own, but if you want to move faster, you've got to invest in yourself.
Yeah.
Right. And the Soul School is really meant like, so I've been in this now for a few years. I've built this beautiful community. You and I have both built this beautiful community online. We have these trusted resources, these vetted coaches who, multiple people within our circles go to and ask for help. And now bringing them into a space where you don't have to go out and vet your coaches. You don't have to, it's all within this trusted community with a group of women who are in the same journey as you and are walking alongside you, not just as coaches, but as other women who are still in corporate and still trying to build their business, right? That's an important component of this too, is that you're not alone. So when you're talking about, I'm really worried about money, or I'm really worried about having this conversation with my boss and trying to get out, it's like, well, all of these women are also navigating similar experiences. Or I don't have a spouse who's encouraging me or supporting me, in this venture. And I guarantee there's going to be other women in that community who's like, I'm with you. Right. And we have these open and honest conversations. So now, like this, I'm getting pumped up even more as I talk about this, right? It's like the Soul School is basically, I am creating something to hand this on a platter to all of these women who are like, I don't want to be stuck anymore in a situation that doesn't serve my soul. I know that there's something greater out there. I want to learn how to believe in myself, how to know that I've carried all of these beautiful strengths and skills from these experiences I've had in my corporate career, my W-2. And you can carry those into building a business on your own. I'm not, again, building a business isn't for everybody per se, but it's for a lot more people than they think it is. And you have what it takes if you can be committed to the process. And so here's the Soul School that's basically saying, here you go. You can build that first year of your business with vetted coaches and resources, probably at a fraction of the cost of what you would be paying individual coaches for what you would be getting within the Soul School.
Not to mention, you said you made a couple of mistakes. I don't believe anything is a mistake, but you may have chosen the wrong partners. People also choose to invest in the wrong places. My website needs to be like, it doesn't. You need a website, but it doesn't. Like there's, taking that advice from people who've been there and done it, where you can also save. You mentioned a really important word, and I have to come back to it because I did not realize how important this word was in my entire corporate career. And that word is community. I actually only had a corporate community. I had a BMW community. I spent still repping my favorite brand. My entire life, my husband works for the company. I worked there for 12 years. Our entire community was BMW. I left and went to a couple of other brands and I never rebuilt that community. I didn't stay there for any of them for 12 years, but I didn't realize how important it was to have a community outside of my work community. And there's a lot more communities that exist today. Back in those days, earlier career days, they didn't really exist. I didn't have time to go to any live events because I was raising a baby and trying to navigate career and any kind of life. But I have built an incredible community through the LinkedIn platform, I'm sure you have other platforms, TikTok and Instagram, but social community, people are really seeking it. And another stat I think people should know is that 80% of jobs, and I would also say opportunities, clients come from networking and becoming one as part of being a community member. I underestimated the power. I am part of several communities today. The Soul School is going to be a really incredible community to serve you, but finding your people, I really underestimated it. And part of these communities, I've gone to cities and been with 16 random strangers that I met on the internet, several times, which, if I asked my corporate KL that, are you out of your mind?
Mhm.
Nope, nope, I'm doing it, and have now actually found best friends as a result,
Yes.
which is a very surprising, as a woman who's 53 years old, very surprising to me that happened. And I think for people who are earlier in their corporate career, do not sleep on community, whether it's the Soul School or some other community.
Yes.
Find your
Yes.
people that are outside that can give you a different perspective, and build a network so that you are establishing yourself, and you're not only then tied to the brand and to the corporate job that you have. Find your people.
We're going to wrap it up here, but if you could give women one piece of advice who are, just as we've been speaking to today, are feeling stuck and tied to a career that doesn't feel aligned to who they are anymore, and they're seeking another route or another pathway, what one piece of advice would you give them as they are searching for those next steps?
Yeah. Oh gosh, there's so much, but the three questions that I mentioned earlier, there is so much power in answering, what do I love? I mean, light your fire, love. What am I really good at? I mean, hands tied behind your back, eyes closed. And how do you want to make an impact on the world?
Mm,
The answer to those three questions gives me goosebumps every single time. It becomes your talent reel. You know, when someone asks, tell me about yourself, that's your answer. It becomes your story. It becomes, wow, if I could spend more of my life doing the things that I'm innately good at and that really light my fire, whew,
yeah.
that is like, sign me up. So if you are able to like take a pen and paper, like I mean a real pen and paper. I did it today for something that I'm blocked with, and asked for some guidance. Take a pen and paper and really put your thoughts down. Once you have some answers to those questions, you can start then reaching out to people in your network or new people. I take 20 new calls from random strangers every week. You take calls from people every week. You can sign up and have a coffee with me, no strings attached, just to explore. I'm a super connector. I will introduce you to people that could change your life. And I know I've introduced people that have been game changing. Find your people and start to explore what you can actually do with this. I think
Mm.
it'll help to be a really important guide.
I just, I mean, I think when I think about the Soul School, I think had I not had you in my world, or had even had this conversation with you, I think the Soul School would have been great. But I think bringing you in with your expertise, with your knowledge from your former background, how you serve and support, and also the journey that you've been on yourself, this personal development journey, you are the key differentiator to what sets the Soul School, apart from other programs that are out there that might have one coach that basically serves every, all the things, clear, getting clarity, finding your content and messaging, right? Building your brand, launching your offers, your sales strategy. Like usually it's like one coach doing that across the board of all of them, but having four different coaches in, but then also bringing you in to now serve and support women on not only thinking about their business, but also like, how can they exit this chapter of their lives in a way that makes sense for them, and begin to plant the seed early on so that they're strategically planning that exit from this chapter as they enter into this new chapter. I'm going to say it publicly. I'm just so grateful that you said yes to being a part of the Soul School, being a part of this journey for me, and for all the women who enter into this space that are like, I want what they have. And we're basically saying, you can have it.
Wow. Thank you for that. When you are aligned in the work that you do,
Yes.
this is what happens.
Yes.
Again, I didn't predict this. I just said yes, and I just dove in and explored. But I really appreciate you saying that. I'm also such a big believer that we are the CEO of our life. No one is coming to save you. No one. And the sooner you take the keys, get in the driver's seat, the sooner you can make magic happen and go change the world, go impact the world, and create the life that you want. It has to be up to you.
Yes. Everybody, Keri-Lynne Shaw is without a doubt a master networker, and she just said, go book a coffee chat with her. Go to her featured section on LinkedIn and book a coffee chat with her. It will be life-changing. You can do the same for me in my featured section, but if you're interested in the Soul School, go to my featured section. You can sign up for my newsletter. You can also book a call with me. I'm happy to talk to you a little bit more about what that will look like. And we're getting ready to launch the Soul School in just a couple of weeks. And starting in January 2026. So I'm excited to have you on board. I'm so excited about me finally getting to a place where I'm like, oh, I can bring all of my experiences together and now serve that on a platter to all the women who are before us, who want what you and I currently have created for ourselves, which is feeling fulfilled, having the flexibility to operate our lives the way that we want to, and to feeling free. And man, I'm so thankful and so grateful for that and for you. So with that said, thank you for being here.
Thank you for having me. Good luck, everybody. We're here for you.